Hello, everyone.
3, 2, 1, we live.
That's right, we're live. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Uh, my name is Shelby Williams with Plano City Council. Amidst the pandemic, we had wanted to have a live seminar again this year. We did one last year.
In the world.
That's right, sweetie. But we are coming to you via webinar now. And that is my little girl, Catherine. She's only 3, but she is a property tax expert in the making, as are you. So we have broken this. We did a 90-minute live session last year. We've actually broken it into 2 sessions this year. Tonight in the Property Tax 101 series, there's only 2 sessions in the series so far, but Scott Grigg and Kristine Hanley, who are here with us now, are going to break down how to protest your appraisal. Recently, everybody across Texas got their property appraisals for 2020. Now, the tax estimates you see there are just estimates based on last year's tax rate. That's all going to be changing, presumably, in the next few months. And so next week, Matt Shaheen with the state legislature and the House of Representatives, who's on here as well, and myself will be coming to you a week from right now with the second session in the series, Understanding the Texas Property Tax System. But the protest deadline, the protest filing deadline for Collin County is this coming Monday, June 15th. So Scott and Kristine have some very timely information for you on how to protest your appraisal. If you are in Denton County, the protest deadline has already passed, but if you've filed a protest, you probably haven't scheduled your protest hearing yet. There's a ton of useful information in here to help you make the best case to lower your taxable value and reduce your overall tax bill. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott and Kristine. Take it away, y'all.
Hey guys, like Shelby said, I appreciate you guys coming out tonight. I know everybody's busy and probably sick of being home, but I'm glad we're able to use this media to get out to you. As it says, my name is Scott Grigg. You might have seen my name around. I recently ran for tax collector. I worked in that office for a long time, have done a lot of studying on the property tax system. So hopefully we can give you some information to help, and I'll turn it over to Kristine real quick and let her introduce herself.
Oh, I should go to this slide with the intros.
So there I am. So I'm Kristine Hanley with Ebby Holiday. And like they said, you know, we can pull comps or anything like that to help you. And we'll give you more details on how those items will help you fight your taxes. So I'm here to help. I just need an email with your address and we'll give you all that information. So.
And as you see, my email's there, and so is Kristine's. Make light of that. I'm not hard to find. I've got my campaign page and my personal page on Facebook, and like I said, you can also reach me through my website. So I guess we'll just go ahead and get into it. I want to leave time for questions, and if you have a question, if you'll just kind of stick it in the chat for us, we'll do our best to get those answered before we end tonight.
Yep. Oh, I do want to ask before we move on, are we recording?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. All right, let's move along. Yes, please, like Scott said, if you have any questions, please just put them in the chat, and we will be pausing periodically to check those. Let me go back to this slide, setting expectations. So you may wonder what's the catch, because this is a free webinar. There is no catch. There is no commercial interest in this. We're not even going to give you a timeshare pitch. We are doing this as a public service, and it is timely right now because, as we discussed, the 2020 property valuations recently came out, and the deadline for filing a protest is coming right up around the corner or is already passed, and you need to be able to prepare depending on the county you're in. Understand that this is a 101 level course. This is not to make anybody an appraisal expert, but it's to help you understand what to do to get armed to go protest and lower your taxable value. Okay.
Okay. This first slide, I just want to give you kind of a quick overview, how the appraisal district came to be. Prior to the 80s, every single taxing entity had their own appraisal. So if you had to pay 4 different taxing entities, it's very likely you got 4 different values for your home. With the legislature, what the legislature's done is created that. Appraisal values are to be set as of January 1st of each year. Properties are supposed to be the market value, which is basically, in layman's term, what the house would sell to a normal buyer in a normal amount of time. They're very vague in that. They don't put specifics, but they do that for a reason. The appraisal notices are usually due out April 15th because of the COVID this year. It didn't get out till May 15th. But the statute says 30 days after the appraisals are sent is when the deadline. So instead of May 15th this year, it was June 15th. I will kind of want to make sure you understand this. Your appraisal value can go up beyond 10%, but the taxable value is not allowed to go beyond that 10%. I even saw one person I was helping where their appraisal actually went down, but their taxable value went up 10% because they had what they call a cap loss from previous years, where the appraisal went up more than 10%, but they couldn't tax them on that. And over time, they will take care of that. So I said, I got a lot of this information from the CAD itself. Our CAD is very useful and puts out a lot of information out there. But as I said, happy to answer any questions throughout the thing. So, all right. Next. As you got your notice, there's some things I just want to make sure that everybody has done. Look at those appraisal values very, very closely. If you have some exemptions on your account, if it's your homestead, if you're over 65, you're partially or fully disabled, make sure that those are noted on your notice, because I have seen some that left those off. Also look at your house information. Do they have the right square footage? Does it say you have a pool when you really don't? Make sure all that information is correct. Make sure they're not classifying your home as a big commercial property when it's really a residential. And I say this because I've seen examples of every one of those issues. And finally, make sure that your taxing entities are correct. If you are in the Plano School District, in the city of Plano, and you have the college and the county, make sure all those are there. Make sure you're not getting taxed for Frisco when you're really in Plano. It doesn't sound like they would make that mistake, but they actually have made that mistake. I actually talked to a gentleman that had been paying for one taxing group that he didn't even belong to and had been paying it for 5 years. He just wasn't paying attention. They will go back and refund some of those funds, but there's a time limit on how far they can go back. Okay. Okay. Are you a good candidate for protesting? To be honest with you, not everybody is. Last year, mine went down. Mine went up personally a little bit this year. This is where people like Kristine come into play. While I sold real estate years ago, I don't have access to that information. I don't know what the comps are in your area. So when you're trying to determine that, you can do this. There are some websites out there. I'm not, again, we're not trying to put any commercial things out there. But some of them will let you put in information. It'll tell you whether you're a good candidate or not. So you can look at some of those. You can contact real estate professionals such as Kristine. They can give you comps. You need at least 3. If you can get 4, that would probably be a good idea, because the board, the review board can reject one of your comps, saying it doesn't work. You need to get it as close to January 1st as possible. A few weeks before, a few weeks after. But since the appraisal value is supposed to be what the property was like on January 1st, that's what we have to deal with. So like natural disasters or things like that may impact it, that happen after January 1st, you really can't use that to protest, because it's what was the value of your house on January 1st. But if you had some damages to your house that were valid on January 1st, then you need to keep that in mind. Another thing you can do is call the appraisal district, request their comps. they are required to give those to you. Sometimes they kind of push back a little bit because they just don't want to. That, and they're very busy. They've, they're like everybody else with this recent situation. They had to work from home, or they got behind, and I'm sure that they're going to be pushing. The whole protest thing is online this year. No face-to-face meetings like we've had in the past. Okay. Now we're getting into some things that I think Kristine will probably have some input on. Just when you talk about what makes your house less valuable than your comps, repairs are the first thing that come to mind. If you need a new roof and the damage happened last year, but you just haven't gotten it done yet, you need to take pictures. You need to call and get written estimates for those repairs. You've got foundation issues. Anything that was wrong with your house as of January 1st, whether you've already had it repaired or not, needs to be documented and prepared for your protest. So, especially if you had it repaired, because that's real good. You can show them how much it costs you to get it repaired. I will keep in mind that this is not just because you have outdated curtains. That's not something that's going to be something that the appraisal board cares about. But damages and things like that are definitely, so if you had a crazy uncle around Christmas or New Year's that set fire to the living room and you didn't get it fixed till mid-January, those are the kind of things you need to take in mind. Kristine, you got anything along that lines that you can think of that they definitely need to document?
Not really. The definitely, like you've already mentioned it, the roof and the foundation, those kind of things. But the comps really do speak such huge volume. For them, for me just to do a quick search and pull some comps, they're comparable to their house, just to show what's sold in the area. And I was pretty successful. I would say this year I helped probably 45-ish clients, and I think there was one I had a hard time finding comps.
I forgot to preface this. Can you all please give a brief overview on what comps are for people who are unfamiliar?
You want to, Scott?
Go ahead, Kristine.
So comps pretty much are houses that are comparable to yours that have sold in the area. So pretty much we will do a search on, I'll do a search of ones that have been sold in the last year, as close to January 1st as possible. The same square footage, the same number of bedrooms. I'll start in the neighborhood. I'll go out as far as 3-mile radius. Definitely in the same zip code and city. So that would be comps. Houses that are comparable to your house.
I think this is a good time to kind of touch briefly on the appraisal system. The appraisal district doesn't have tons of people that are coming out there and taking pictures and driving by and looking at every single property. They do a mass appraisal. They pick out a neighborhood, and then they value the lots at a certain price. They value the homes at a certain price per square foot based on the amenities that those houses have. So they haven't seen inside your house. They don't have access to MLS. The only MLS data that they are supposed to get is what has been provided to them by you, the homeowner. I know one of the appraisal districts in the state got in trouble for actually going out and buying the MLS data. That's not what they're allowed to do. They're supposed to determine the value. So like where my house is, I'm in the middle of the block. I have no view. My lot is valued at $15,000, $20,000, whatever it was. And across the street, those guys have a beautiful view of a park behind them. Down the road, they have the view of a beautiful golf course behind them. But all of our lots are set for the same value. So those are kind of things that you can point out, because like I said, they're not coming to everybody's house and coming inside. They're not like when Kristine would go list a house, she would go and take pictures and take measurements and try to sell market your house the best that it can and put all the things. But those upgrades can come into play with these comps if all the neighborhoods in your house have pools, but yours don't, then, that needs to make light of. If you've got builder grade linoleum floor and everybody else has marble floors, there are some upgrades like that they will take into consideration. So just kind of keep all that stuff in mind. But if you're going to bring that stuff up, you've got to get some estimates on what it's going to cost. If every comp that Kristine gives you has granite countertops and you still have Formica, then you need to know how much that granite countertop is going to cost to put it in your house. So just kind of keep all that stuff in mind. And, usually they're pretty reasonable, but, sometimes they, they'll push back because, they don't like being told that they're wrong sometimes. So, okay. Once you get all your information together, I would suggest that you get some kind of binder, present it in an organized case. If you've ever had someone try to present an argument to you and they're unorganized, they don't have anything prepared, and they're pulling, a file over here and a piece of paper over here, it's easy to get lost, and they're going to lose interest in what you have to say. Get your file together. Start with your property. Add the comps, add the things that where you have a problem with their assessment. I have a problem because that house has a brand new roof. My roof is 25 years old and needs to be replaced. That house doesn't have a foundation issue like mine does. But have all that stuff ready to present and come in prepared. If you're not prepared, you're probably not going to get anywhere. The slide here says, no appointment required. That you used to be able to walk into the CAD and ask to meet with an appraiser. And barring if they were not tied up with somebody else, you could. This year's a little different. Everything's having to be done online. So you have to make an appointment. The second option you have, and actually you have more than two, but locally you have two options. You talk to the appraiser. Sometimes they'll make you an offer that's worth your while and you don't have to go to the review board. Sometimes they say, nope, I'm not changing it a bit, and you have to go to the review board. And we'll talk a little bit more about the review board here in a minute, but to file that formal protest. So like I said, just be organized and be ready to go.
And I'll note that I filed for my protest online last week, and a couple of days ago, just for filing to protest, I received an offer to knock, I think it was 1.6% of the taxable value off my home.
I see we got a question. Fred's asking, when making a claim based on upgrades needed to make your home comparable to the neighbors, what percentage of upgrade cost is translated into the appraisal value? They don't know what the upgrade cost is because they don't know what your home needs, Fred. They don't, like I said, they don't get a chance to come inside unless someone has provided them some kind of information, like off of MLS or something, to show what the inside of your house is like. They won't know that. I would just go in there with just 100% say, hey, for me to get granite countertops, it's going to cost me X number of dollars, and I would need that in order to be comparable. For me to get hardwood floors instead of carpet, because everybody else in my neighborhood has hardwood, I would go in there with the full estimate and present it all. Now, they may discount it a little bit, but that's a decision they'll have to make. I would come in there. I've said this before, and it's the first time I've said it in this meeting. Our homes are an important part of our lives. It's the most valuable thing that we have, and we spend the most money on. It's where we raise our kids and raise our families. But unfortunately, in this situation, you got to take the emotional side out of it. You got to just look straight facts and figures. Just because there's no value to them. Normally, in every other day, you look at your house as your palace. When you're trying to protest, you need to look at it as the biggest dump on the block. What do you need to make it better? So you just got to kind of change your frame of mind, because I mean, I love my home. I decorate it. I spend time with my loved ones here. But when it comes down to protesting it, I've got to be as picky about everything on this house as possibly that. And I will keep in mind, just because you list a repair and you get an estimate, doesn't mean you have to have it fixed. You just need that information for your protest. All right, let's see.
I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. Were you ready?
Yeah, that's fine. We'll
All
get back. We'll get back to a couple of questions, the questions here in a minute. A little talk about the review board. The appraisal review boards are made up of 3 people, and they're taxpayers just like you and I. I wouldn't qualify for the review board just because of where I work. I work for the tax office. There are some people that don't qualify. If you're an attorney that handles protests, you can't be on a review board. But these are picked from people who volunteer or are nominated. They do get training from the state. They'll make an appointment, and you'll go up in front of 3 people, and you'll present your case, and the appraisal district will present their case, and then they're going to make a decision. Now, I told you before, there are some other options outside of the 2 things we have here, but it's not the end of the road. You can actually appeal to the state, or you can file a lawsuit. But just keep in mind that takes a lot of time and a lot of money. And if you do take that route, I would advise you to go ahead and pay your property taxes so that penalties and interest are not accrued on that. And if you end up winning and they lower your value, they will refund you the difference. And those refunds will come from our tax office. I've been asked before why the refunds come from the tax office and not the appraisal district. Well, because the tax office has the money. They collect all the money. The appraisal district doesn't. So if you're going to get a refund, you have to get it to where the money was. So that's why your check comes from them. But they will get the information from the appraisal district. Okay. Okay.
I think that's the last slide.
Okay. Well, I mean, I know we got some questions that we can answer. Just in brief, kind of go ahead and get your comps. I would get them from the CAD and also from, your local real estate professional like Kristine. Make sure your protest is done effectively. Be organized. Go in there with everything. Make sure your legislature knows issues you're having with the property tax system. We've listed a few of them here that you can contact whoever your local your House rep is, or your state senator is, and you can always go and Google that and find out who you represent. And if you got any questions, I know that you can contact Shelby, you can contact myself, contact Matt, and they will help you get all that together. So see if we can get some of these questions. I think we left off with Brad. Considering on a number of homes being converted to rental properties and lack of maintenance beginning to show. I think that I've seen where the rental properties are actually bringing the value of some of the neighborhoods down, which is also lowering the appraisal value of homesteads, because a lot of people don't want to live next to renters. I actually have renters on one side of me and then a few houses down. So, but knock on wood, I'm lucky they do keep that up. But it will impact the comps when they go to sell those. And that's where Kristine's comps will come in to help. If everything's selling lower than what the appraisal value is, that helps with you. So, okay, it says I bought a house in January last year. They appraised it at $50,000 based on January 1st. comps are not my favor. What is the best bet? So that if the comps really aren't in your favor, you got to have something to support. The only thing you can go in there and do is show them what is different in your house, the house you bought. If you bought it knowing that there was a ton of repairs, then that's where those repair things come in. And I mean, I talked to an individual that bought a historical house that they were fully aware they overpaid, for it on the market value. But that's where you got to identify market value. And that's what they're bound to. And that's what you need to consider. So whatever you can show them that the house is worth to a normal person in a normal amount of time, that would help. Okay. And Mary, I have not personally been in front of a review board. I have talked to several people that have. I've heard some great stories where they walked out and they got, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 reduction, or a lot of times it's better to figure percent. They got a 15, 20% reduction. And I've had this exact opposite, where not only did they not reduce it, but they actually threatened to find ways to raise it, which they don't have the authority to do, but it's been kind of hit and miss. I've heard stories on both sides of that coin. But I think the biggest advice that I've heard of people who have had success is they went in there with an open mind. They didn't go in there confrontational, and they got better results. If you go in there with the attitude, okay, you guys are a bunch of morons and you don't know what you're doing, no one likes to be insulted, and it puts them on the defensive. So don't go in with that attitude. Try to have a good attitude and an open mind, and present your case. And and they're going to present their case, and then you're going to have a chance to dispute, and say, hey, I disagree with your point because the house you guys are using got completely remodeled last year, and it's the only house in the neighborhood who did. So that's the biggest thing with me is I think attitude goes a long way with the review boards. And keep in mind, they're not professional appraisers. They've had some training from the comptroller's office, and I'm sure they get some tips from the appraisers there at the office. But they are supposed to be independent. They're not supposed to be necessarily leaning automatically against you before you ever walk in the door. But I will tell you that if you go in there with an attitude that they're completely wrong and you're completely right, you'll probably come out with negative results. So we've got another question here. Your experience was terrible a couple of years ago. They threatened to raise mine and made my experience humiliating. I was polite, had an organized PowerPoint presentation. I hate to hear that. I get those complaints, and I have passed it on to people over at the appraisal district, because that's not the way that the system was set up. People like Matt and our other reps around the state have gone in there trying to make it as fair as possible, trying to make it where they will be reasonable. But unfortunately, I hate to say this, but I've heard some experience just like yours. You were well organized, went in there with a good attitude. And keep in mind, you may be the 30th person they've seen that day. They may just be tired. I mean, I'm not trying to make excuses for them, but they're trying to get a lot of these done. I think last year over 75,000 people protested their appraisals. Out of a million people, that's not a whole lot, but that's a lot to try to get through in just a short amount of time. Brad, I think on your house being a bigger one, I think Kristine can probably would probably agree that the smaller houses in the neighborhood sell for a higher per square footage, and the bigger houses sell for a lower per square footage, and it all kind of equals out throughout the neighborhood. At least that was my experience when I sold real estate. When you are the biggest, or you have a unique property, the comps are even harder to find. When you get that, you just kind of got to base it on a price per square foot basis. If the comps say that they're 120 a square foot and they've appraised yours at 150 a square foot, then even though the house is smaller, you got to use those comps and break it down into some kind of basis that's common across there. So naturally, the 2,800 square foot house should sell a little cheaper, but at the same time, price per square foot should come in. Do you have anything to add on that, Kristine?
No, not really. You pretty much covered it. So.
Again, if there's Shelby, can we put up the slide with our information so they have that as we kind of wrap this up? If there's no more questions, I mean, I'm here as long as we have the Zoom room. After that, I'm available through email. I will. Let me type this is my cell phone number. Unless I happen to be in front of an elected official or in a meeting or already talking to a taxpayer, I do answer the phone. If I don't, you can text me. You can leave me a voicemail. I'll be more than happy to help. That's one reason I got into doing what I do. I love serving the citizens of this county, and look forward to continuing doing that in the future. Enjoyed it in the past, and hope to do it. Continue it for many years. I'm not a native Texan, but as I say, I got here as fast as I could. So I fell in love with the area, and so. But if there's any more questions, Shelby, Matt, you guys have any input, maybe for your next week's thing, or?
Yes, thank you. I'll turn my camera back on now. Real quick, if you have not yet filed your protest and you're in Collin County, you do it all online. There will be two options for most homeowners as for the reason for your protest. Correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, you can select both of those. One is going to be that your property is not priced comparably or valued comparably to other homes in the area or comparable homes. And the other option is that it's overvalued.
Yes.
They are not mutually exclusive. So when you file your protest online, you will need to, it's a required field, you need to enter in an estimate of what you think your property is worth. What advice would you give folks for that?
Well, like I said, you need to put on there, don't go so low that it's unreasonable. What would you believe it is? Be reasonable with it. Don't, if your house is worth $200,000, and even if they appraise it at $250,000, don't go in there and put that you think it's worth $140,000. They're not gonna take you seriously on there. So, be reasonable with it. The thing with, I know last year, Shelby, if I remember right, we had several people that had the over 65 exemption, and they were really concerned that their appraisals went up so high, which it shouldn't have, because in their mind, their taxes are frozen.
Right.
Taxes are frozen. Your liability is frozen. That does not prevent them from continuing to raise your appraised value. So just keep that in mind. If you happen to be over 65, while your assessment taxable value is frozen, your appraisal value is not.
That's right. It's an important distinction. A lot of folks, especially if you're new to Texas, you get your property appraisal in the spring and you're not sure what's what. You see the taxes there. Some people think it's the tax bill. They see the appraised value versus the taxable value. The main thing that matters when you get your appraisal in the spring is the taxable value. But like Scott said, make sure that it's all being calculated correctly. Make sure the exemptions that you have coming to you are being applied from the proper taxing authorities. And each one is different. Plano ISD offers a set of exemptions. City of Plano offers a set of exemptions. Collin County, Allen, McKinney, Frisco, Anna, they all offer their own set of exemptions. So you got to look up for your locality and each of your local taxing authorities to see what exemptions you have due. We've got a question on here from Mary. So is it the tax or appraised value that cannot raise more than 10%?
Mary, that's your taxable value, your
Yep.
appraisal. If you go on to the, it won't necessarily show on your notice, but if you go to the appraisal district, sometimes when you look at a house, it'll say a cap loss. If your appraisal value goes up more than 10%, they can only raise your taxable value 10%. So they'll put the difference into a category of what they call a cap loss. While the appraisal, but just because your tax is froze, your tax value was froze, doesn't mean you cannot protest your property, your appraisal value. That you can still do it. It's not going to impact your taxes per se, but with those exemptions, there's only one exemption that all of us get for a homestead that's actually guaranteed, and that's the $25,000 from the schools, which is in our Constitution. If you remember, a few years ago, we voted to raise that up to $25,000. The other assessments you get or exemptions you get are, as Shelby mentioned, an entity by entity basis. They may offer it, but it's not going to be the same amount. The minimum is usually $5,000. They can do it by a straight dollar figure, or they can do it by a percentage. But you can also see this on the appraisal district website. When you pull that up on the over here on the right-hand side, there's an exemption rate chart. You can pull that up, and it'll show you exactly what exemptions are allowed per taxing entity and how much that is, whether it's a percentage of your appraisal value, whether it's a straight fee, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. Some of them even go up to $60,000. So just kind of keep all that in mind.
Yep. Yeah, that's important. And let's say your appraised value is, it doubles because let's say you struck oil on your property. Congratulations. Your taxable value, like Scott was saying, it can only go up by 10% per year. Now they'll try to catch up year after year. It'll go up, that taxable value will go up 10% every year until it catches up to the new appraised value. Hopefully the oil well will compensate you for all that. But the taxable value is what's capped. Conversely, if you, God forbid, get hit by a tornado and the taxable value, you rebuild with something half the size that you had because you're an empty nester and you just don't need that big house anymore, then your appraised value will come down and your taxable value should also come down commensurately. I got a new question from Kay. I bought a new home in December 2019 and they appraised it $50K more than the cost I paid. How to protest that?
Well, okay, just like any of the others, what is it about your house that made it the value you paid for it? Were there some damages? Was it, if it was one of those situations where you just got the deal of the century, they're probably not going to work with you very much. But if you paid $50,000 less than the market is, there's a reason for that. And you just need to identify that. If you have an appraiser, if you financed it, you probably got an appraisal from an appraiser representing your bank. If they also came up that your house was worth $50,000 less than what the appraisal district, you can present that. That a professional appraiser says it's worth $50,000 less than what you guys say. It's not any different than anything we've talked about so far. Just it's still the value as of January 1st. And if you own the house of January 1st, you qualify to be, have your homestead. That is your homestead as long as you don't have one somewhere else. And You have the same rights to protest that as anything else. I will tell you that a common practice over at the appraisal district is they don't, if you think your house is worth less than what you paid for it, they're usually not going to go below your purchase price unless you've got some very compelling evidence on why that house is worth less than you paid for it. And in that case, you've got to show why you paid more. Maybe you paid more for it than anybody else would because that was the house your grandparents grew up in. Okay, that does not make you a normal buyer. And that doesn't fit into the definition that we talked about as far as market value. Market value is what a normal person would pay for the house and a normal amount of time on the market. So I hope that answers your question, Kay. If not, please reach out to me, maybe with some more specific questions, and I'll do my best to help you. If we can find some, maybe some comps to help support that, I think, I'm sure Kristine would be happy to help you there. But, that's what we're here for, to help any way we can.
I've actually got a question of my own. Last year, when I protested my appraisal, the most comparable house in my whole area was one that had been on the market for 2 years. I mean, pretty much the same size, same make, same year built, everything. But it had been on the market for 2 years at a certain price. They had dropped the asking price twice, still hadn't sold. You would think that's a good indicator of actual market activity, but the board would not accept that. Any comments or thoughts about that?
That's when you get into the board. It's hard for me to determine what the board's going to do. I know that I will tell you that the appraisal district itself went through a lot of people that have been there for many, many years, retired in the past couple of years. So you got some newer appraisers on there. In fact, I remember you and I talking about this last year. I do know sometimes when a house sits on the market for a long time, it kind of gets this kind of curse on it for some reason. And if you started out way too high, it's just kind of hard to get it sold if it's been sitting there a long time. I've seen that happen, and that's why I always used to encourage my clients not to overprice a house, because those first few days on the market are precious, and if it sits there for too long, then it's gonna hurt you. And what the reasoning was behind it, I know you and I talked about it, that it's the exact same house, just a street or two over, that you would have thought that was comparable. I also talked to somebody that the review board actually disallowed some appraisals that were within a month and a half of it, but replaced it. They used a comp that was 1.5 years, 2 years old. Mm-hmm. While they're allowed to do that, if it's hard to find, that's not the way the statutes are written, and that's not the way people like Matt and our legislature has designed for that system to work. So.
Yeah. Now, in order to pull your comps when you protest to say, here's what the actual market activity for comparable homes to mine says, any realtor, any licensed realtor like Kristine can do that for you. And generally you want, I think, between 3 to 5 comps.
Yeah, minimum of 3. They'll want 3. I would try to get 5 if you can, in case they reject 1 or 2.
Okay. And like Scott was saying, you can go onto the like Zillow or a bunch of sites and look at the details of these homes. Whereas the appraisers, the county appraisers, like Scott said, they're not actually doing a full appraisal of every property every year. They're just making estimates based on market activity. So you can go in on the comps, that either your comps and the county's comps, and see how they truly align on the interior of your home, like granite countertops versus Formica and all that sort of thing, hardwood versus carpet. These are things the county appraisers have no idea about. So you can look all of this stuff up online and come prepared to say, this is not an apples to apples comparison. This, however, is. All right. If there are no further questions, I will foreshadow next week's session. So next Thursday, June 18th, at the same time, 6:30 p.m., State Representative Matt Shaheen and I will, we do have another question. I'll get to that in just one second. State Representative Matt Shaheen, who's on the line, and I will bring you the next session, which is understanding the Texas property tax system. I will give you a little teaser. As Scott said, some 75,000 people protest their appraisal every year in the county appraisal district. They go before the boards, all of that. If a tiny fraction of that number of people showed up at their city council meetings and school board meetings and county commissioners court meetings about their tax rates, then the return on investment and the reduction of taxes would be much more significant than simply protesting your appraisal. But nobody does it. We're going to show you how.
I went to, on that note, Shelby, I went to 8 different city council and school board meetings last year when they were setting their tax rates. Out of those 8, a total of 1 person stood up and said something about keeping the taxes low and what their budget should be.
Yep, they're ghost towns.
So, and I think I heard maybe a dozen countywide that actually showed up and protested their tax rate. You know, the taxes are your appraisal value times your tax rate. It does no good for 100,000 people to protest one side of the equation and nobody protests the other side.
That's right.
So
to give you an idea, we'll go over all this next week. So you will have to register separately for next week's webinar. So to give you just a brief idea, when you go through the protest process for your appraisal, which you should, then you can shave maybe 1%, 2% tops off your tax bill, maybe 3% if you're really lucky, or more if you have really extenuating circumstances, but on average between 1 and 2%. Conversely, in the city of Plano, not for all taxing authorities, but the city of Plano itself, in the 5 years prior to last year, taxes on existing homeowners went up 40% in just 5 years. If the same number of people, or even a fraction of it, came to the city council meetings where the new tax rate was adopted each year, do you think it would have gone up 40%? Probably not. You can get a lot of bang for your buck, but you got to know what the process is. You got to know how to engage in it and how to make a difference. And next week, Matt and I will show you all of that.
we did get another question from Brad.
Yes.
Of the 5 comps, received 1 house that sold more than list price, the others sold for less. How does that factor in? I think that the thing is, how long were those houses on the market? If the 1 house that sold for over list price was one that sat out there for a lot longer, that factors in. You know, you definitely don't want to use a comp that's going to argue their point instead of yours. So I would use the 4 lowest ones that are comparable. You know, we talked about the market value being a price that the house would sell in a reasonable amount of time. So if the one that sold over list price sold, you know, took a long time or an exceptionally short time to sell, maybe they just found the right buyer at the right time. I mean, personally, the house I'm sitting in right now, I made an offer 45 minutes after it hit the market because I had lost three in a bidding war. So depends on how the market flows. Sometimes that's great when the market's a buyer's market, and sometimes it's more of a seller's market. So, but as far as the 1 house selling over, I would say it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference unless there's an exceptional short or exceptional long timeline to that sale compared to the others.
Yep. Great. If there are no further questions, anything that any last words that any of y'all would like to add?
Well, I believe this is being recorded. Is that correct, Shelby?
I believe so, yes.
If there's, I think we're going to try to get that out there and post it, you know, in the social media world. If this was helpful to you, please share it with your friends. Share it with those who may not have been able to do there. Invite some more people back here next week. I personally believe that the information that are going to be shared next week on how to protest the property tax rates, and also look at the budgets and how they're spending your money is very, very crucial. While the appraisal district, I don't agree with everything they're doing, they don't know what the tax rate is when they set your appraisal value. The city councils, the school boards, even the county commissioners, they know what your appraisal value is when they set their tax rate, and they can adjust it accordingly. When Matt was a commissioner, he was part of that group that started a chain of lowering the tax rate to offset appraisal values that has kept our county taxes level for the last, 7 or 8 years now, Matt?
Yep, that's right.
That it can be done. Plano proved it last year. They adopted the effective tax rate for the first time in many years. Just because you're a growing city does not mean you cannot keep taxes level. They proved it. It's all about budgeting, and it's all about being wise with our money. This is not their money; it's ours. So, that's all I had to say. Just to encourage people to get out there. I plan to be back next week in case anybody has any questions. In the meantime, just reach out to me by cell or by email, and be happy to help you.
Thank you, all you taxpayers out there, for joining us this evening. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Matt. We will post this and make the recording available. So like Scott said, please pass it around. There are a lot of taxpayers out there right now for whom this is a timely topic. So we look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Thank you,
Thanks.
Christine.
Bye.
Bye.